Welcome to Realfire videos. In this video, we're going to go through the field analysis feature, which is introduced in version 4.1, and it is available in the Enterprise Edition. It is so easy to create fields in Salesforce, and we typically create many of them. And I've seen in customer places onward of up to 1,000 custom fields, and after deep analysis, up to 20 to 30% of them are not being used. But just because that it is not so easy to get an understanding of what field is being used, if it is data is being captured, what kind of data is there, and we typically end up in creating new field and use it because it's less risk. So with this particular feature, we can get really bottom of what fields are being used, so what kind of the data range we are looking at in each field, and if it is a pick list, what pick list field and what pick list values are being used and which ones are not, and that include the record types as well, so get a kind of visibility into all of these aspects. To access this feature, select any of the objects that you wanna go through. For example, in this case, I'm just gonna choose an account, and if you double click or right click and say view, it'll come to this view. And one of the tab in this particular view is called actually field analysis. So when you go to this particular field, this is a default view that you get to see there. So the screen is divided into three different sections. The first section talks about the profiles. The second section talks about the runs, and third one is the stats. So there are kind of an hierarchy. So you create various profiles for the analysis. That profile includes what kind of records to analyze, what kind of fields to analyze, so on and so forth. And the same profile can be executed or analyzed multiple times, and those create various runs. And each run has a various stats that has been collected. So the same profile can be run multiple times, and you can visualize how that runs have other stats have changed over the period if you'd like. Okay, so by default, every object comes with a default profile called all records, and that will analyze every most of the fields. We exclude automatically the binary fields like a base 64 fields or the long text fields. Apart from that, every other field is analyzed. So you select any of the profiles and right click on them and say analyze, and then you should see that records are being analyzed. So here we don't have a lot of records, so it is pretty quick. But if you have, let's say, 100 to 200,000 records, you can expect to take this about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And if you have 500,000 records, you can expect this to take about 10 to 15 minutes. And if you have 1 million records, it may take up to 20 something minutes to analyze. And keep in mind that we use a batch API to query the data. So if you have a lot of records, it will use a proportionate number of the API calls during the process. So once you have the record completed, and you would indicate, what kind of status it is. So if it is errored out, you'll get an idea why it is errored out, and you can see this particular message here in that case. And if it is completed, it will also show how long it took it, so that you get an idea before you start. If you have a prior runs of that profile, you get an idea how long that particular run took previous time. And we also show how many records have been analyzed. So all the percentage fields that we show in the stats is against this particular number, because it is possible to limit the number of rows we analyze. We'll come to that later. So it is important to understand that this percentage is against this particular number of records analyzed. So when you choose a particular run, you will see that particular stats of that particular run, and sorted, less populated to the highest populated, because with the assumption that you would be paying more attention to the fields that are not being used. So it is populated from 0% to 100%. So in the stats, we show various information about the field. So we show what is a field, the label and the name, and what is the name of that, what is the type of the field, including if there's a fixed list, how many values are there. It shows what is a populated, how many records this particular value has been populated on, populated percentage, and we show data type specific stats like a minimum length, a maximum length, and the min value, max value, earliest and the latest. So the min and the max length is applicable if it is a string based data type, like an email or a URL or a text, those kind of things. And the min and the max value, it is for anything number-based fields, like a percentage or a revenue or a currency or a double or the number. So we capture what is the minimum value that we have seen and what's the maximum value we have seen for that particular record, for that particular field. And if it is a date field, we show earliest and the latest. So this indicates what is the earliest value we have seen for that particular field in all the records that we analyzed, and what is the latest field that we have analyzed. So we also indicate two other stats, which is the first record date and the last record date. So these two are the first earliest record that we have a value for this particular field, and the latest record, that's a created date of that latest record for which we have a value for this particular field. So this can give an idea when was that field came to be in existence, when was that, we actually start populating into that particular uh, field. So, and after that, we have a whole bunch of metadata statistics that we capture. If a field has a description, if the help that shows up here, and if it is a created by, created date, and we show this metadata as well. And obviously, this information is available only for the custom fields, because for the standard fields, this information is pretty much empty. Okay, so from this you get the information what you need to analyze, how the field came to be, if it is being used, who created it, when was it created, and what is the earliest record we have, what is the latest record we have, what are the kind of ranges of values that we see in that particular field, and what percentage, of course, it is populated on. So if it is a pick list field, we also show the pick list analysis. So we analyze every pick list in that particular record set that we analyzed, and we show out of all the values we have, what pick list values are really being used. So in this particular case, if the percentage is 0, obviously you wouldn't see any pick list being used. But if you take up a pick list that has some population, so you can see that, hey, in this case, all the pick lists are being used, and this also gives a proportionate of how many records have that particular the pick list value populated. So if it is a pick list is an unrestricted pick list, where you can put in a value which is not in the defined set of values. So this indicates if this particular value is an undefined value, meaning that this value is found in the record, but it is really not defined as part of the field definition. So you can use this to understand if there is any, kind of the non-matching or a non-valid domain of values for this particular pick list. So if it is a record type, so you can see the record type uses for this of all the records that we analyzed. So in this case, we can show that, hey, we have only 2 record types being used, and the rest of them are not being used. They are not applied. So, and it also indicates that only 2 records have the record type, and the rest of them are actually blank. Okay. So as you can see, you can filter the list of stats to a particular field, and that will search by the field, the display name, in this case, the label or the name of the field. And one point to note that this information comes from metadata API, and if you do not have access to metadata API, this information will be blank. So because this particular tool supports both the users who have metadata API access, who may not have metadata API access, so we gracefully fall back if you don't have. So if you don't see this data, make sure that you have access to the metadata API. If not, contact your system administrator to get that access, so that you can get this, you can see this particular information as part of that. So you can create multiple profiles, and when you create a multiple profile, and you can run them. For example, let's say, I care about a profile, a few fields. Then you can choose what field that you want within that. I just care about, some few fields that we want to analyze. And if you want to limit, let's say I want to limit to just 10 records or whatever the case. So in this case, you can specify any circle class that comes after the where condition, something like, the where, the billing, CA, something like that, or you can specify any class that comes after, except the group by, of course. You can specify the limit class, you can specify the offset class, and you can also specify the order by so that the records are picked up in order if that is something that you would want to do. So in this case, let's just specify the limit 10. We have 24 records, and by specifying the limit 10, we would analyze only 10 records. So just to give an example, and of course, we'll analyze only these particular fields that you have chosen. Okay, so let's go and run that field analysis. So when you complete it, you can see that records analyzed are 10, and here are the different stats we have for that particular field. So when you have multiple profiles or multiple runs within the profile, so for example, let's say in this case, the 15. So when you have a multiple runs for the same profile, so you can switch between the different runs to see the stats. If you can see that in a switch between the stats, the number of records or the stats changes depending on how many records. Or also when you switch between the profiles, so the last run within the profile is automatically selected, but of course you can choose a different run to see their stats. So if you have a profile that you don't care about or the runs that you don't care about, you can go ahead and delete them. For example, in this case, I'm just deleting these profile runs, or if you just want to delete the whole profile, you can do that as well. Okay, so if you want to edit a profile, you can just double click on them and you can edit them. For example, let's say I just want to edit this, and you can change the list of fields that you have there, and of course you can run them. So this is all about the field analysis feature in the Realfire. So let us know if you have any questions or if you have any feature request so that we can enhance on top of this. Thank you.